Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and Dagobah gets its own version of Saved by the Bell in this episode. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. This time we take a look at the fourth book in the Jedi Prince or Trioculus book series by Paul and Hollace Davids, what is essentially the beginning of a second trilogy of two trilogies meant to be originally three trilogies in that series, which of course should sound familiar to us as Star Wars fans, entitled Mission from Mount Yoda. This is a book that was released in February of 1993, so the Thrawn trilogy is still not over. Only Heir to the Empire and Dark Force Rising are out. Last Command is still coming about 3 months later. And in Star Wars comic publishing, Dark Empire has now ended. And the only ongoing Star Wars comic series out there at this time is Classic Star Wars, the one that at this point is reprinting the early Archie Goodwin, Al Williamson newspaper strips in an edited, redone format, which is something we've covered quite a while ago on this video series. As with the other books in this series, Mission from Mount Yoda has that cool opening Dramatis Personae, although I will say it's kind of weird because it is in Lost City of the Jedi that Trioculus got burned. He is shown in the artwork of the following book, Zorba the Hutt's Revenge, as being burned in this art, but not being burned there in the Dramatis Personae type part there. Whereas in Mission from Mount Yoda, in which he appears in Carbonite, he's shown burned rather than in Carbonite, though that's him in Carbonite, kind of hard to see right there on the cover. So they updated the pictures, which is kind of neat, just not with that. And they also wind up spoiling, sort of, one of the things in the book, because this is the book in which they finally meet Triclops, the real son of Palpatine, who happens to have 3 eyes, one in the back of his head, whereas he was in shadow, essentially, as if he was talking about the government or something on the news and wanted his identity held secret. He's in black there in the first 3 books, and now, starting with Mission from Mount Yoda, we see what he looks like down there at the bottom. But this is something we see before we actually read the book and meet the character. Though I guess for a kid's book, spoilers aren't nearly as big a deal as letting them know visually what these characters are going to look like. The book, of course, again, has The Adventure Continues segment that tells what happened in the previous books. It is all illustrated throughout, and it does wind up at the end with not just a preview of the next book, but a glossary. Really cool thing that the Bantam Skylark books here had done that unfortunately a lot of the other Star Wars books never bother to do, even though a lot of times they really need it. Heck, a lot of Star Wars books until quite a while later don't have a Dramatis Personae in it, whereas at least these have the Rebel Alliance and the Empire character sketches there. The gist here is that after the previous book, Trioculus was encased in Carbonite. So Trioculus is pretty much screwed at this point. And he is now being held by Zorba the Hutt. And the prophets of the dark side have their own plots in motion here. Their decision is that they want to take over the Empire. And again, we think these are the true prophets of the dark side. We will later find they are fake prophets of the dark side, the way things are retconned later in the continuity. But for now, we think they're the real ones. Moff Hissa goes through, or Grand Moff Hissa, goes through this entire scheme to get back the Carbonite frozen Trioculus and brings him to the prophets, only for them not to free him, but to have him destroyed, so they can take over and they can get their hands on the real Glove of Darth Vader. Remember, Trioculus had made a fake one because he was dying from the effects of it and whatnot. So now the prophets of the dark side, specifically Supreme Prophet Kadan, or the fake Supreme Prophet Kadan, are now in charge of at least this segment of the Empire. We will find, of course, that later on you get, the Asan Ishard stuff and the ruling council and all this stuff has been playing leading up to this. There's all kinds of Imperial power struggles, and Ishard's actually in control of a lot of the Empire at this point. So it just so happens that while on Zatrop, for basically a vacation, our heroes, Luke and Leia and Han and Chewbacca and Ken the Jedi Prince and KT-88, Kate, that housekeeping droid they bought for Han, and R2-D2 and C-3PO and Chip, one of the droids that Ken owns, this big group of heroes is there, and they discover an abandoned Imperial vehicle. And in checking it out, it turns out that it says that it was working for the prophets of the dark side. They find a recording within it of this new prophecy from the prophets that basically says that the end of the Rebel Alliance is near during a mission from Mount Yoda. It turns out that the rebels have just moved their leadership from Yavin 4, with Spin and everything, to Dagobah, where they've already set up Drapak, which is the this new Alliance facility there. The Defense, Research, and Planetary Assistance Center. Planetary assistance, which makes me think that it's meant to go along with the environmentalist themes here rather than the idea that it's meant to protect that planet, because it's meant to, of course, help the rebels protect the entire galaxy and such. And where they've also set up a school for the children of the people who work there called, I kid you not, Dagobah Tech. Yeah, and Kin is supposed to start there soon as a student. The base has been set up at Mount Dagger, which has now been renamed Mount Yoda, hence mission from Mount Yoda. Any mission at this point is going to be a mission from Mount Yoda, which, if the prophets are right, will lead to the end of the Rebel Alliance, which is what they're still calling it at this point, rather than the New Republic. The name inconsistency is something that carries out throughout this series. The environmental issue this time, essentially, is kind of environmental. The Empire is on Duro, and they've got all kinds of toxic waste and stuff that is only being held back by a dam at this point that could wind up destroying the environment, but they're also destroying a bunch of priceless artifacts and taking other ones for the Supreme Prophet. So there's sort of a historical / environmental issue going on here at once. But there's this Duro scientist, or archaeologist, who winds up showing up and says, hey, his name's Dustini, hey, this is what's happening on my planet, we need help. And when our heroes go to help, Kin is accidentally aboard the Millennium Falcon still and winds up being an unintended stowaway and winds up with our heroes on that mission. Just so happens that also there's been a prisoner transfer from Kessel to Duro of Triclops, the real three-eyed son of Emperor Palpatine, or former Emperor Palpatine, who has 2 eyes in front and 1 literally in the back of his head. So the Imperials are trying to get their hands back on him because he is now an escaped prisoner, but also because they need to take him down because, of course, if he is the heir to Palpatine, he could wind up playing a role in either side's plans as they're plotting for control of the Empire, or wind up derailing them entirely. The rebels wind up, of course, meeting Triclops, and Triclops recognizes Kin somewhat, recognizes the pendant he's wearing around his neck, and talks about how he knew a Skywalker, which either means he knew Anakin more than likely, or had heard of Anakin, or had heard of Luke at some point. So he recognizes Skywalker as a Jedi, and he also says he used to know a woman, a Jedi woman, named Kendalina. Kendalina, Kin, the pendant. Gee, are we setting up another I am your father kind of moment? We don't get it here, but they're certainly setting it up in this book for anybody with a clue reading the book. But basically, we learn that, he's not a bad guy. He's a son of Palpatine, but he's actually presumably going to be one of the good guys here. Moff Hissa winds up trying to take Kin, and the end result is that he's saved by kind of a combination of the efforts of Triclops and the others. But Triclops uses, and this has always seemed weird to me, it's like a magnetic pulse, maybe kind of the Force, of zapping Hissa with something from his third eye. It's a little bit strange. But then the dam, and this is kind of harsh given the fact that this is a kid's book. One of the dams that's holding back some of that toxic waste is broken, and as Triclops watches, Hissa's lower body is hit by this stuff, and it's like acid, and it just eats him away. Ugh. Kind of ugly possible ending there for Hissa, though we will find he will come back later, because in Star Wars, unless you're totally dead, losing a part of your body doesn't actually mean you're gonna die, even if it's a lot of your body and it's acid. This guy would have played very well with the xenomorphs from the Aliens and Alien versus Predator stuff. But we end here with this idea that now Triclops is with the rebels. And there's a level of, kind of wariness of this. Because they've been told, mission from Mount Yoda will end the Rebel Alliance. They don't believe the prophets, but a mission from Mount Yoda will supposedly end the Rebel Alliance, and now they have Palpatine's own son, supposedly a good guy, but he could be lying, in their midst. What's going to happen? Well, we find out shortly as the 5th book gets released, Queen of the Empire. So, before we move on to that one in another episode, what about this? Mission from Mount Yoda, is this book an essential read? As before, same thing. This is an essential read if you're reading this series. You need all the pieces for the series to make sense. However, from a broader EU standpoint, within the official continuity as it exists at the moment that I'm recording this, no matter what happens with Disney and such in the future, no, it's not. Things have been tweaked, things have been retconned. A lot of characters from this one don't wind up showing up again outside of source material and whatnot, or official continuity blogs and such. So as interesting as it is to see this pulled into the continuity later on, it's not something that needs to be read for those wanting to get a good feel for the official continuity at this point. Cool piece of Star Wars publishing history, but not something that we actually need to read. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.